Welcome to Pain with a Purpose, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, redemption, and purpose. I'm your host, Chris Woods, and each week we will sit down with guests who have faced challenges with substance abuse, mental health, and recovery. But we're not just dwelling on the past. Instead, we'll explore what keeps them driven towards a purposeful life. Join us as we navigate the journey from pain to a purpose. So with that, welcome back to Pain with a Purpose, Season 1, Episode 18, with Dan Feldman. Appreciate you coming out, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, dude. Full disclosure, right? We don't know each other from a can of paint.
That is a fact.
Other than the fact that it was very awkward the first time, or at least like the first time we spoke, I was like, you look real familiar. And we couldn't put two and two together, but I just found out that it was one of the gyms that we, do you still go to that gym?
Nah, man. So we talked about it, and it was what was the first gym?
I think it was King.
No, we were talking about the one in King of Prussia, and the.
But you were at Sweat.
No, the one right across the street from
Power Build.
Power Builder, L.A.
LA
Fitness, yeah. And then we just as we sat down, he was like, "No, it's from King."
Yep.
And King, for those who don't know, is a powerlifting gym. Great equipment, right? Definitely second to Alpha, like if you're not familiar,
yeah.
But a real compact space. And so it was a pain in the ass getting there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I loved King Gym for the time that I was there, just because it was like, I think it was either right before COVID or in the middle of COVID. And like, he was throwing us a solid.
Yeah.
But,
he stayed open until they told him he couldn't stay open anymore.
Well, I think he reopened because he had to like get a little funny with like, hey, listen, if you cops want to lift, why don't you come on in? So yeah, it's funny how like it's such a small world.
Yeah.
And it became even smaller when our mutual buddy John, right,
Mm-hmm.
shout out Philly Gaines and John Bennett, was like, hey, you should have him on your podcast. And I'm like, for what? And he goes, and you're like, yeah, I just had 20 years. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Just celebrated on Saturday. It's crazy. Time flies.
Yeah, man. Well, congrats, dude. I mean, that's fucking huge.
Yeah.
I like to think that I'm still in my 20s. I'm not, but like I'm 32. So it's like you have, more than half my life clean.
Yeah. I mean, I might not look it to all those folks watching this, but I'm actually 43.
Good for you, dude.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about all that too, because I mean, I think a big part of that, right, is obviously the mental health aspect, the physical aspect of like being in the gym and, making stuff your priorities.
Yeah. Taking care of yourself, mind, body, spirit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, man, I really appreciate you coming out.
Yeah.
Walk me through that, dude. 20 years ago, I was in third grade. I'm sure you were up to something a little different.
Yeah. So I was, I don't know. So to be honest, I started using real young. I was like 11, and I don't know, just progressed like the nature, like, so those who aren't familiar, addiction is a disease. It's usually you don't start out at your end, right? It's a progressive type of thing. And, I started smoking weed and drinking occasionally and it started getting progressive, like I said, doing some other things. And then really what brought me to my knees was opiates and benzos. And if you're familiar with them, it's not the same tick as it is today, but it was pretty gripping to me. And so, I don't know, 21, I was getting arrested, gave hot UTs, couldn't get it together, man. Like the school, the work, just living amongst the society that, you see people going to school, you see people like going on the train and doing their day to day. That wasn't for me. And so, it just so happened, I remember getting pulled over in a car that wasn't mine. They were basically like, I had given a dirty UT 2 weeks prior to my probation officer. And the cops were like, listen, we can lock you up or we can get your blood. And I was like, at least if they got my blood, I had a fighting chance of not going directly to jail that night. And so I was like, all right, cool. So they took me to Abington Hospital and took my blood. I get a call like 2 days later you know, from my PO, and she was just like, listen, you violated again. We're going to have you come in, and, you know, you're just going to have to do this. And so I remember it wasn't like clear to me, but I remember, you know, I did a whole bunch of dirt that ended up with me having some money. And I just went hog wall crazy and bought all these drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And short end of that story was I OD'd on primarily benzos and opiates. And so I had a stroke. I apparently, you know, opened the window. It was cold out. You know, they had the fire department. I was living at my grandparents at the time. Fire department had to kick the door in, take me to Abington. I'm unconscious in a coma for 7 days. And basically what happened was when I woke up, I could not use my arms or my legs. I was basically a tetraplegic, which for those who don't know is you can't hold your neck up. And so they had to strap my head into the wheelchair to keep my head from going like this. And so, yeah, it was just fucked up. And I don't know, for the grace of God, you know, they were telling me I was going to be a vegetable. I'm obviously not. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, just went through the process of them okaying me. I was doing like acute withdrawal because my body was kind of expelling all the toxins, and that was happening in the hospital. And then I went to a brain injury facility called Moss Rehab, right off of Broad, right by Einstein on Tabor Road. And yeah, I was there for 2 months. And so while the head doc was like, nah, this dude, he's got to have some long-term facility take care of him. Mm-hmm. Shit just didn't happen that way. Yeah. You know, it was the first time in my life, you know, I wasn't big on God, but it was the first time in my life that it was apparent that there was something, I don't know what it was, whatever you want to call it. For me, I choose to call it God, that made, you know, what was impossible possible for me. Yeah. And so, you know, got the opportunity to leave, you know, at that point, prior to that whole incident, I don't think I really wanted to live too much, right? But was just a punk and wouldn't pull the trigger or, like, you know, go in front of a moving train, etc. But after that, it was a complete 180. You know, I thought my life was that much more important. There was something at the center of it that was more important than just, you know, living the way I have been. So yeah, I mean, things slowly but surely, man, you know, physical capability started coming back. I started making meetings. I'm part of Narcotics Anonymous and have been for these 20 years. Yeah, I don't know, just working, you know, family, you know, working steps, gaining all the things that you would, you know, along the way, you know, how to manage a checking account, you know, getting an apartment, mm-hmm. like all these things that, like, you know, I had no idea about, and, you know, just progress from there.
It's a really interesting point. I mean, cause we're going to jump all over, but, like, that's where I learned how to be a productive member of society, was in AA, really. Yeah. Like, I said it previously, I'm going to continue to sound like a broken record, but like when I went to a recovery house, like I had to do that whole 9. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't know how to make a phone payment. I didn't know how, like, if I wanted a car, right? Like I was like, Mom, can you co-sign for me? You know what I mean? Like, it was that type deal. And like, Mom, I wasn't on great terms with Mom at the time.
Yeah.
So, you know, like first I had to, like, you know, have that conversation. It's like, I knew nothing, about like being a good employee, any of that stuff.
Yeah, I totally relate. It's like basically what I think about is like, you lived, but the steps and process and structure of life, like, just went to the wayside. So like everything that you just talked about was like things mm-hmm. that were non-existent.
And the wild thing is like, it's stuff that we learned really early on. Yeah. I just disregarded all of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride. Walk me through, so when you went into Abington, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you didn't like just pick up and like within the next year you were just in Abington, right? Like the progression was quick, much like myself, but you know, so like, what did that look like when you actually entered into NA, right? Because like my idea of like what it looked like for me when I walked into AA, you're right, close to 10 years ago, it looks a little bit different than it does now.
Yeah.
How have you seen that change? And like, how have you seen like people staying clean and like people struggling? And like, I don't know why my rhyme or reason put me in the position I was at that time to find those group of guys that got around me, but like, walk me through that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had done, I failed to mention it before, but I had done like 2 rehabs and a mental facility in a span of like 6 months. And so that was all part of my plan to dodge my PO as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been introduced to NA because they say, go out, make a meeting, whatever, when you leave. And so I did it, for a little bit, but I wasn't staying clean. And so as soon as I got out and, I had friends, that I still had, known, but hadn't talked to for a while. So I was, using the phone, calling them, having them pick me up, and started just, the urgency was great at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's the urgency is always great, but it's not as great when your life is put together a little bit. You know what I mean?
It's another really valid point, right? Because like how much, like I was really, really willing to do step work early on, right?
Yeah.
And have an experience with it more importantly, but like, am I as willing today? Right. And I'm all about being like fully transparent.
Yeah.
But like, am I as willing today to do step work with like, a good job, a family, the kids, the car, whatever, everything on the outside looking good.
Yeah.
And I know, as much as I know that I shouldn't say I know, but I know that like I shouldn't have to let my ass get on fire to continue doing step work.
Yeah.
But there was like a window of opportunity early on where it's like I was willing to do anything.
Yeah.
So that's always been tough for me, like peaks and valleys of that.
So my philosophy here, you know what I mean? Because what it means to you now is certainly probably not what it meant to you then. And so I keep kind of like the foundational pillars in my mind, right? Like the reason why I have what I have is primarily due to NA, right? It structured itself such that I was able to build upon it, and it created the quicksand to be hard cement that I build the structure on. And so I never forget that. At points there's like ebbs and flows of like my participation within it, but like I don't ever get it confused. Like we talk about step work, right? And so the whole point is to become a better version of yourself, not only for yourself, but for the people that you want to keep around you and the people that you interact with. And like, whether that's job, whether that's family, whether that's, you're still going to an anonymous program, and treating yourself like that. And so for me, I want to always be a better version. So I try to do the least amount of dirt in a given day so that when I put my head on the pillow, I feel confident that I did the best things that I could have done in that day. Specifically, I'm a father. So like it's always circles around my kids, and then, use them as the baseline for how I want to treat other people too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really interesting, right? Because as a direct result of me straying from the beam,
Mm-hmm.
right? For a better way to put it, like how am I really interacting like at work? How am I really interacting with my kids? Is like my tolerance with like the patience really run super thin, like thinner than it usually is.
Yeah.
And there's a direct correlation to like me doing the right thing in my own recovery and my own mental health, and me just kind of like metal on metal doing whatever I need to do to get by until it eventually gets bad enough where I'm like, okay, sorry again, here I come, I'm coming back. So much. I have so many questions.
Well, I was going to say, that's not to say that I didn't drive over here like a fucking maniac, because that's like probably the worst attribute that I have today is when I'm behind the wheel. And I was just with my buddy, 2 nights ago when we celebrated. He helped me throw the event. Like he took care of it, invited everybody, did everything. And so we're talking. He's like, I've been in the car twice, and that's too many times that I've been. That's double the amount of times that I ever want. And I don't want anybody to say that.
Well, what's going on? You were just reckless, or you drive? You drive with a purpose, or
my tolerance for my. So I love people that I love, but for the general public, it's like, I could take you or leave you, right?
Yeah.
Because most people suck and are only in a glass bubble where they don't actually see beyond, their blinders, which is usually focal point or focused on them. And so for the most part, I don't like people. I work I work with people for my job, even though I'm not working at the moment, but I'm an account manager. Like I manage relationships, right? And so, it's counterintuitive,
Yeah, I mean, listen, you want to talk about the chameleon thing, right? You could probably talk and thrive with anybody,
Yeah.
but like outside of like your work day to day, you're probably like, I really don't want to deal with anybody.
Nah.
I have the same thing going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like at home, like I hear that, right? And it's like, talk for a living. Just let me be. So yeah. So as far as like the meetings that you're going to, like currently, right? Mm-hmm. Have you seen them change at all?
Yeah, very much so. COVID was like the catalyst, I would say, for where we are today. Obviously, it's, you know, I don't know how it is now, to be honest, because prior to COVID, you see a lot of newcomers come in, and you know, I have no idea what happened to those newcomers, mm-hmm. nor do I know what happened to a lot of people, right? And so, I mean, obviously, you can deduce that they're either, you know, living life without, you know, NA specifically, or just using, and or both, right? And so, I don't know. So I take it upon myself. I'm incumbent to be that much more vocal, welcoming, etc. for people that come in.
Yeah. No, I noticed the same thing, and I made a comment the other day. Actually, like I alluded to, right? I'm an AA, you're an NA, but I have a good buddy of mine that's an NA in Delco.
Mm-hmm. And I won't hold it against them.
Right. Well, I was like, NA might be the only thing that Delco got. Yeah. But like, that's what I was talking to him about. I was like, hey man, like, have you noticed that like, there's no newcomers, like, and that used to be like a really like bright spot, right? Like extending my hand, like, you know, watching somebody have the lights come back on. We started a new home group probably 4 or 5 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we're already shut down. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like
crazy.
We had 4 or 5 home group members, and like that's who it was every single week, and nobody new came.
Yeah.
And it was really tough. But anyway, so you're an account manager. Mm-hmm. You're living your best life right now, though.
Best life.
Because you're just like, you know, on leave, hanging out. But you're a father.
Yeah.
Right. What does that look like? Like how, like as far as recovery is kind of in every aspect of our lives, right? Like how has that shaped you into the dad that you are today?
So I think, you know, coming from a family and being raised where I haven't talked to my father for like 20 years. Mm-hmm. He's just not a good person. And so having a mother that you know, as bipolar and was kind of the catalyst in me becoming who I became as far as using, you know, I think I have a clear mind of what I didn't want, which was the same shit that I got served. Mm-hmm. What I did want, you know, was afforded by me being clean, was the complete opposite of that. And so, you know, granted, my first marriage didn't work out, but I knew that I was going to be the best dad that I could be. Right. And so I continued that path, man. I like, you know, I'm not a, what is it? That's you know, the soft, you know, kind of guy, but I love them to death. And like, there wouldn't be anything that I wouldn't do to support them and their best life.
It's so weird how much like, you know, you have 20 years, I have 10, right? Yeah. So like, I can only hope to be where you are in 10 years. Although my kids are a little bit older. You know, I grew up with like a loving mother, right? And I grew up with my grandparents, but like my dad was just never really there. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I became much older, right, and actually got sober that I found out that like he's very much like just an alcohol. Well, we always knew he was an alcoholic, but like he just never got sober, right? So who am I to judge somebody that had the same thing going on that I did? I just ended up getting sober, and he just never drew like a sober breath, really.
Yeah.
But my thought was saying all that was like, I'm never going to be my father, you know. And like I hold that like so close to my heart, right?
Yeah.
There was points like where my dad. And like the resentment started there. But like there was points where like growing up, like at sports games, my dad would be umpiring my game. Right. But like never came to any of my games. You know what I mean? And like, you know, so like it was a very twisted childhood. Right. But like my mother gave me everything that I could ever need. Right. I'm sure I had a lot of wants, but like I had everything I needed.
Yeah.
And it just kind of stemmed from there. Right. But through,
the 12-step process and AA and things like that. I was able to be there until the day that he was diagnosed with cancer, right? And I was able to be there, not like a super loving son, but I was there every, for the most part, every single day while he was on hospice, like being a son.
Mm-hmm.
Would I have done that if I got sober? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just weird how like that change of perception happens because much like yourself, you're like, people kind of suck.
Yeah,
I agree to an extent, right? But I also know that we can change. Because I also know that every single person in this world could benefit from going through 12 steps.
I agree. And the reason why I think that is because a lot of people don't have this, right? And like the opportunity to like look at themselves and be self-aware, right? Because, honesty is like the foundation for what we talk about. And if you can't do an honest look at yourself, right? I feel like it's kind of a loss at that point. You know? And, as far as my father, I mean, I like hear you talk about like, being there for him and stuff. I don't even know if I would, right? Like even with the time that I have clean, even with the perspective that I have, I don't know. Like I'm, deep seated kind of, resentment, anger, etc. Right. Same with my mom. Right. But I don't know the lengths that I'm willing to do. Because they haven't been presented yet, right?
Sure. I mean, listen, and the only reason, everything's case by case, right? Sure. Like mine was when I got sober, when we went through like the 9-step, right? We went through like these 3 columns of like who I was willing to make an amends to, who was a maybe, and who was like a fuck that. My dad was in the fuck that, right? And then my sponsor's like, all right, we're going to do this one, and this one. I'm like, dude, all right, this one's fuck that. He goes, yeah, nah, you can do that one first. So I went and I did this, right? And then that's when I realized how sick he was, right? Like I went there, I sat down, I did this amends, I poured out a ton of stuff of like how I was never a son, how I talked shit on him to every single person I ever came in contact with. And then he called me the next day and didn't remember any of it, right? So like he presented as normal, but wasn't there.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, fuck, dude. So like that's how I realized that like he was like, I got what he had. He might have passed it down. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was just fortunate enough to like receive God's grace to like get sober. So there was something else I want to talk about. I don't know. It'll come back to me. So you're looking to embark on like this new journey with whatever employer it is, right? Still going for like, is it like sales? Like, what do you?
No, it's like, so IT is finicky, right?
So you're in IT. Yeah, okay.
So I worked for startups and post startups and whatever, different form of maturity, from the organizational standpoint. And so, I'm still looking to do the same thing. I'm actually almost done. Like I had looked even before they gave me the opportunity to get the severance.
Yeah.
So I was already like, had one foot, or a bunch of irons in the fire already. And so it's just, been two weeks. It'll be 3 weeks on Wednesday, since I've worked, but I'll have 1, 2, 3 for sure, locked as far as finals.
Yeah.
I'm going to get something. Have faith that's happening.
It's interesting, right? Because you said Abington. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Abington and then ended up moving to with my grandparents. Actually, I lived with my grandparents in Jenkintown, which is part of Cheltenham.
Okay, because like like how did you get into like IT sales, right? Like, well, I mean, you figure, listen, like a lot of people in NAAA, right? It's either like shout out all the roofers that I've had on, right? But like you're starting a roofing company, you're working in treatment.
Speaking of Delco, what?
Yeah, or like you're joining a union.
Yeah.
Like how'd that like? Because I mean, I assume if you started working or using around 11, and you were probably smoking just a couple joints back then, but then it quickly progressed. I assume you weren't the best student.
No, it was terrible. I went from like, honor student to swift decline. So yeah. I mean, I to be honest, getting clean and staying clean affords you the opportunity, right? Not only, regroup with friends, regroup with family, build a life for yourself. Part of that life, I was fortunate enough. I went back to school at the age of 30. I tried doing it without a degree. And you're basically like capped from any kind of, trajectory upwards. And so went back to school, incurred a whole bunch of debt, which was what I was afraid of from the beginning. But, graduated Drexel, got into consulting somehow. And then consulting led to what I do is called customer success. So got into Dell. And since Dell, I've just been doing this for like the last 8 years. And so it's given me an opportunity, right? I mean, like, I'm of the mindset, if you can get clean and you have drive and want to do something, change is for you. Like, it's going to happen. You just have to put elbow grease into it and one foot in front of the other.
I mean, I don't know if you were in the store, if it was you or anybody else. But like John had talked about, like people like us, right? And like once we put our mind to something and we're like genius type level stuff, I might not have tapped into it yet, but we're not just going to
seems like it. I mean,
we're not just going to
right now.
We're not going to just like walk over the fact that you just dropped the bomb and you were like, I went back to school. It just happened to be Drexel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a huge deal. I mean, you could have went to.
No, I went to CC. Well, what I was going to do was
you started CCP, whatever.
And then I was going to go to Temple, but Drexel, it was compelling because, they sold me, right? Hindsight being 2020, I probably could have done it from DeVry University, right? And not had such a big.
Did it with an eighth of a day.
Yeah, exactly. Like $20K and you can get this piece of paper online. No, but listen, it is what it is. I've cut so I graduated in 2014 with over 100K in debt. Have since brought it down to 50K in debt, a decade later. Yeah. So I'm right on target. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Drexel's like that's a feat, dude. That's like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, I mean, it's like a true testament, right? Like if we get clean, we stay clean, right? Get sober, stay sober. You can do whatever you want.
Whatever you want. Probably not going to be president, right? But you could be president of a club.
I mean, is it crazy to say? Crazier stuff has happened.
I mean, listen, we're in today's age. I mean, I'm not a politic dude, right? But I read that my man is going to get a pass on his criminal charges past the election.
Yeah.
So it doesn't impede upon the election. Where the fuck are we living right now?
Dude, it's a wild time.
It's crazy time. Yeah. Yeah. And just a note, that'll probably be the only political talk you'll hear tonight, folks. Whatever.
But yeah, dude, it's pretty wild, right? Like I've seen like countless stories of people like, doing literally whatever they want and being so successful at it.
Yeah.
And that was a huge part of like the thought behind the podcast, right? Was not only did I get sober, right? Not only have I stayed sober and God willing will I continue to stay sober, but like I also wanted more, right? Like I started working in the career that I'm in at like an entry level position, right? Like I started grinding and kept my head down as a direct result of watching the people in the rooms telling me how to show up for work and show up early and show up to be a respectable employee. Yeah. And like, turns out you can grow within a company. And now I have like this career type job, right? But like now I also want more. And I don't think it's any type of coincidence that the last person that we've had this type of conversation with was also an NA. Maybe you guys are doing deeper work. I don't know. But he also has, I think, like 18 years or something like that. And he was like, I'll botch it, Tyler. But he was like, what if like, all of the work that we've done up until this point, right? What if we were able to like pour it back in again, right? And double down again. Yeah. Because we're allowed to. We're allowed to in recovery want more.
Listen, you say that and it's accurate, right? It's 100% accurate. I think there's a fine line, right? Because I operate under the thought that I just work to get the next thing, which is similar to addiction, right? But it helps me never settle, which it's a good thing. So like after my divorce, I found somebody. Not only did I find somebody, we just bought a house together. And it's like a house that, I feel like we shouldn't be living there.
Like a forever home.
It's a forever home. And not only a forever home, but like an upper echelon forever home, or at least what I would consider, right? Yeah. Talking to jobs now that I'm like, would never have the opportunity to do so. Treating friends and like operating in life, never would I thought or believed that I could ever be capable of doing so. And these are just, even after like, what was it, like 15, 16 years, going through the whole divorce process nearly crumbled me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like as people, addicts, alcoholics, whatever, that under extreme duress is where we operate the best.
Mm-hmm.
You know, push comes to shove. You put somebody in a corner and they're like you or I, they're going to come out, you know, covered in gold dust and like, you know, just living their best life.
So I also say it to the people that are just getting sober all the time, right? Because I'm like, yo, careful. Our bounce back time is quick.
Yeah.
You know, give yourself 2 weeks in a shower and next thing you know, you don't need God, you know? And that's my story as well, right? It's like, you know, like work's going good, life's going good, right? And like God becomes less and less and less and less, right? And then like I start fucking up. I start like, you know, being up here too much. And I'm like, God, where you been? And he's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the whole thing is like there's always all these buckets, right? There's a finite amount of water. You can't get any more water, but you get new buckets. And from the only experience that I've had is as long as I keep NA at the core of everything, like everything's going to work out. Like, and I only hit like one meeting a week. I'm trying to hit more, but life gets busy. I try to call my sponsor every day. I try to call at least a couple other addicts every day. And that's what I can do. And so as long as that formula doesn't change, you know, the things of like putting your head to bed at night and doing the best that you could of that day doesn't become that more arduous or like harder to do. Just from me, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think I'm abnormal in that because I know a bunch of other dudes that do the same equation and, you know, it works out.
I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, right? Because like, you know, you want to talk to the people, and I talk to people frequently. They're like, hey, I tried AA, I tried NA, doesn't work for me. It's like, did you fail the program or did the program fail you? Right.
9 times out of 10, you know, they failed the program because they weren't open minds, not, you know, closed mouths, not going to get fed.
Yeah. It's like when we really dive into it, it's like, what were you really doing for yourself? Right. And you know, a lot of times people will be like, well, you always hear, which I don't know. Like, I don't know. Right. But my own opinion on it is like, oh, why stop calling my sponsor? Okay. A lot of times people are like, well, I stopped calling my sponsor, you know, and then, like, you know, like, first off, like, where were you at in steps? But like the program of recovery is a 12-step fellowship. And you were just telling me that you were just going to meetings. Like, at what point did you want to start the program?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I could go on a whole tangent.
I mean, like what we say in NA is like, you do 5%, you'll get 100% return.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like all you have to do is make meetings. Like if you're new, just make meetings. You don't even have to raise your hand. You don't even have to get a sponsor. You can make random ass meetings and you will stay clean. But the caveat to that is has a cap. It has a ceiling. And so like the only way that I know to do it is to follow the directory, which is get a sponsor, get a home group, make meetings and be of service.
Yep.
Right. And so like everything else falls into place. So like praying may go to the wayside on any given day. Your step work might, you know, take some cobwebs on, you know, after a few months, but like that water is not going away. So the buckets that you had can still put water in. Like, you know, I started gratitude lists like a couple months ago and been doing it. I wouldn't say every day, but you know, decent amount.
Yeah. Frequently.
Yeah. And so like, I hadn't done that shit for like 10 years. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I will say this, and we can get into a whole thing, right? And hopefully like the comments go nuts over this, but like, I mean, why is there such a difference in like the AA steps? Although they're completely the same, but like, why is there such a difference in like the way that AA works the steps and NA goes through them completely different with like a workbook or however, you know, some would say they're more thorough. Some would say that, you know, you guys work like a step a year. Like, I don't know what it is, but
I would say time is, the time between steps. Like, I mean, I can't speak to AA because I don't really know too much about it.
Yeah.
But what I do know, like from what I've been told from people who are recovering in AA is that you can go through the steps relatively quick. And you can go like, if I had a year, 2 years, 3 years, you could have gone through the steps like multiple times.
Yeah.
And so,
so when I got sober, I went through them in like 90 days.
Yeah.
You know, now it wasn't my first time around, because I went through them before multiple times and I was living like shit. But yeah, 90 days. And then they told me I was going to like go sponsor people. Right. But this is the crazy thing because like, you know, and that's the response that I always got from someone in NA. And I was always hesitant early on. Right. But it wasn't until I was given the analogy from some old timer in AA where they were like, hey, remember when you were learning your like a job and you were like, it was your first day on the job and you're like trying to soak everything in. You're guessing this guy to death and you're not soaking anything in, but you also don't want to look like an asshole. And I'm like, sure. Yeah. He was like, remember few months went by. And next thing you had to do, you had to train somebody and you knew it like the back of your hand. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, it's the same deal, right? We can't teach it unless we give it away. So, I mean, and I absorbed that lifestyle, right? And it worked for me.
Yeah.
But I also know that like NA works for a ton of people as well.
It's just different philosophy on,
Yeah.
you know, I think on the back end of what that old timer said to you, in NA, we would focus more in on, you know, the fact is like, people who do steps and have time is kind of the sought, like you want what they have. At 90 days, you can make the argument like, who the fuck has their shit together in 90 days,
Yeah.
right? And so, you know, for me, it wasn't even someone that I really listen. I really didn't like my sponsor at first. So
I hated my first sponsor.
So I had a sponsor for like 6 years, and his sponsor was a dude that ended up sponsoring me after that. And so I remember I would see him out. This motherfucker couldn't remember my name, and I had introduced myself like 6 times. I was like, "Fuck this guy." And so it would happen. Ex-girlfriend, he was married at the time. We went out to dinner and we started having conversation, and just the philosophy on like where I was in my step process and kind of some things that were going on at the time. I was like, yo, I'm hip to this, dude. What's your number? Let me call you. And so I was not great terms with my old sponsor. And so I felt judged, et cetera. And not, you know, I was like, all right, some shit's got to change. And so I stayed with him a year, and I was like, all right, it's time for a change. And then dude, when his process was like, I'm not going to tell you yes or no. I was like, fuck, you aren't. I was like, I'm telling everybody you're my sponsor. I'm just going to keep fucking calling you until you say, stop calling me. So that was his whole philosophy. But he's been sponsoring me for like 14 years at this point.
Does he know?
Yeah, I've told him this story a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, I couldn't fucking stand you.
My first sponsor, and I picked him because I hated him.
Yeah.
Because he was so.
Wait, why did you pick him? Because you hated him?
Just because it was Facebook.
Okay.
I hated how opinionated he was on Facebook, and like how opinionated he was about recovery on Facebook. And I disagreed with everything that he would put up on Facebook. I was like, dude, this is a jerk off. Why even say that?
Yeah.
But one-on-one, or even like with like a group of guys, right? Like he would always shoot me straight.
Yeah.
He would always tell me how I was living. As much as it hurt to like hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's the guy. Like, that's what I need in my life. I don't need somebody that's going to be like, you know, did you make that amends? And I'm like, yeah. And like, I didn't, you know, and they're like, okay, you know, so it was somebody that was going to shoot me straight and like really tell me what I needed to hear.
Yeah. How long did he sponsor you for?
About 2 years.
Okay.
And then he went back out and drank.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
But yeah. And that's again, right?
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. And I think this, you'll align with this, right? Especially with like NA, AA. I think the philosophy is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people like, you know, 90 days. What would somebody have? What did I have? To be honest, we had nothing. I was probably still on a top bunk in a recovery house. The front windows of my car didn't go down. It was a Buick Century, right? Like I didn't have AC.
Yeah.
Had 2 subwoofers in the back though, so I was cool.
Was it gold? Was it gold?
Of course it was gold.
Yes, there it is.
Of course it was gold.
That is the Buick Century color.
Yeah, dude. Limo tint around the whole thing, on the windshield as well. Hubcaps, the whole 9.
Yeah.
Didn't have like anything going for me really in life, other than the fact that I had a temp job and I wasn't fighting a drink or a drug at the time.
Yeah.
You know, so I started sponsoring guys, right? And like I remember hearing people being like, you're sponsoring people, like how many of your sponsors? Like I'm like, dude, a lot of times I would take people through 1, 2, and 3, never hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, doesn't that weigh on you? I'm like, yes and no, right? Mm-hmm. So now like fast forward, you know, year 3, 4, 5, I'm still doing the same stuff. And it's like, listen, like I've had a lot of guys go out on me.
Mm-hmm.
But my success rate's 100.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it says in the book, right? Like I can't keep it unless I give it away. Right.
Mm-hmm.
My success rate's 100%. I'm going to continue to do this stuff.
Yeah.
I can't control. If I could, I would be God.
Yeah.
Right. As much as it pains me to like, you know, want them to do the right thing, I can't control that. And I'm sure your experience is fairly similar in the sense of like, you know, like I've stayed sober.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never tried to do this before. Right. Like honestly. But it wasn't until I adapted this lifestyle where it's like stuff started to really change.
Yeah. And it's like, so I haven't sponsored that many people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, my criteria is rigorous, right? Cause like, if it's what I practice,
yeah,
like, you know, then what I tell you is if you sought me for a sponsor, is what you got to do.
Oh, you're scaring them off.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I honestly don't give a shit. Like,
yeah,
you know, I'm not warm and fuzzy. Like, I'll keep be open and welcoming, but like, I'll give it to you straight. Like, I don't need to be told like, you know, and you know, I'm not going to hit meetings because I have to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell you to call me and you text me, you know, it's like an automatic, like, bro, like I
already half-assing it.
Yeah, you're already like fucking up. Like,
mm-hmm.
I didn't ask you to text me. I asked you to call me for 30 days. And so if you can't even follow simple instructions, this ain't going to work.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I mean, that's how people were with us when we got sober.
Nah, dude, nobody gave me like slack. They were, you know, plus I was willing to do whatever somebody was telling me to do too.
I learned the hard way when I was like, why didn't my sponsor call me today?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not fucking chasing you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, if you want, we have, you do what we do. But like, I'm not calling you. Like, call me if you want, call me if not. But like, if not, like, we can cut ties now.
Yeah.
All right. So enough about that. Because I know for us both, right? You want to talk about like mind, body, spirit, but the gym's a big part of it for me.
Oh yeah. 100%.
How has like your recovery kind of spilled into like staying physical? Because I remember, listen, you think I didn't pick up on it. I know that you used to smoke Newport.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I used to smoke. So I had the stroke and I still smoked, right? Like,
really?
Yeah, it was bad. Like, I don't know what possessed me to even do something like that, but I remember what the catalyst was. When I came home, I couldn't breathe. And so I grabbed a paper bag. I was still living with my grandparents. I just deaded it right there.
Mm.
But I wanted something more. And so I was like, all right, I ended up moving down the city and I start like working out. And I just wanted to be more, if you can't talk the talk without, you know, making those moves to like live it. And so like, you know, if especially me, I had a stroke. They're like, bro, you need to get your shit together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was more susceptible to having another one by smoking. And so, yeah, I just don't know. Like I wanted to, you know, once you start to see a little gain, you know, started seeing more all in and, you know, to, you know, needing, you know, messing your body up, you know what I'm saying? Like I have bad shoulders now, I have bad joints, et cetera, but like, now I'm in it for longevity versus like powerlifting or lifting real heavy.
Yeah.
And, it's just part of nature for me now. Like, you know, when I wake up, I get the girls ready, I drop them off at school, I go to the gym, I come home. When I was working, I, you know, start the day. Now it's, you know, same deal, just not working.
Just going back to the couch for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but like, yeah, I feel like it's integral, right? Like,
now,
know,
do you struggle to get there ever? No. So I still do.
No.
And I don't know if it's like mental health or whatever it is, but like there's days where I'm just like, I literally have to take a pre on the couch.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, I can't just sit here.
Yeah.
Like I'll lose my mind. And then I finally get there. Right. But it's like, you know, I mean, yeah, I still struggle to get there.
So I don't know. I look at it as like, you know, a key. So like, it wasn't until like about 6 weeks ago. So I was like doing way too much. And so, you know, John used to train me actually.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so he was like, great. Like I saw him post it and he's like, I'll do it for $20 a session. And so I was like, yeah, bro, like, of course. And so he like wrote meal plan and I was like doing all that. And I was like, I couldn't see fucking any more sweet potatoes, green beans, ground turkey, or egg whites for the next 3 years post. We got to take
a pause here because I'm going to talk to one of these cameras because his meal plan stinks, dude. It absolutely, it doesn't taste like anything food related.
No.
And it's why I only lasted a week.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I digress.
But like, so, I mean, for me, I realized that if I'm going to work out as hard as I'm going to work out, I want to enjoy what I eat because I like to eat too. And so I made a happy medium, sometimes a little bit more than the other, but like whatever. But yeah, now I'm in for longevity. So I started 6 weeks ago, 3 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off. And I do like John taught me, singular muscle groups. So I do usually like heavy, more, a little bit more heavier, even with high reps, and then do something immediately after, usually like to complement or do a superset type of thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing it and I just like it. it just, you know, I can feel sore afterwards.
Yeah. And do you like do cardio too? Do you run or no?
No, like today I did the stair climber for about like 15 minutes.
Okay.
But I did arms today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything cardio related, I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, I used to run a lot. I hurt my knees and my hips doing it. I used to be quick, but I couldn't hold mass.
Yeah.
And so after fucking my body up, I don't do it, but I'll do like some cardio sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, as much as like I said that, like I still struggle to get there, right? I know that as soon, much like a meeting, right? As soon as I'm done, and I'm in my car, it's like it's a completely different day, right? Like I feel like that now, and I don't know if I need to switch it up with like going back in the morning or like.
When do you go at night?
I usually go at night now, just because like how it all works with like the kids' school, after school activities, right? Like her schedule, my schedule. So yeah, I usually go around like 6:30.
And you take pre?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Dude, I wouldn't be able to sleep.
Well, I'm like lifting with like high beat, whatever they're called, pros. You know, so it's like I got to hang around them.
Sure.
You know, I can't be slacking in there.
Yeah.
And they hate it. They're like, yeah, get 2 more, and I just dropped the weight.
Yeah.
Like you had 2 more. I'm like, I don't care how much I had left.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm not stepping on stage.
Yeah. All hangry.
Yeah.
Like always hangry.
Yeah. Or like I didn't eat enough that day because like much like yourself, right? Like a lot of times, like my day to day can either be very flexible or it can be super hectic.
Sure.
So there's days where I might even forget to eat, right? Next thing you know, I'm at the gym and I'm like, why am I shaking right now? So like diet's like real hard for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I get it. I mean, like diet's the other thing is like, you know, I feel like the flexible nature of my job allows me to do that. Even when I am like crazy, I can still, because I work from home, I can just walk out and grab something real quick. You know, I try to eat like 4 or 5 times a day.
Yeah. See, I'm happy, honestly, if I get 3.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times what it looks like is like something in the morning, something like midday, right? Which is usually like grotesque.
Yeah.
It's not okay. Cause either I'm like, you know, like way too hungry and I like, next thing you know, I'm blacking out on DoorDash.
Sure.
Or I'm at like a work lunch and now I can order whatever I want. You know, I never go for the salad.
No.
So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, peaks and valleys, right? When the pain's great enough, eventually I'll change it. But like, it's the same thing, man. Like food is an addiction for me too.
Yeah.
I eat for the effect.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure like, you know, at some point, like I'll have a guest on that we can talk much more in depth about it, but like, that's still a thing.
Listen, I get it. Like, so I try to do the right thing with food. Right. But like, you know, after my home group, I go out on Tuesday nights. I eat, so it's 6:30, 7:30. I don't get to eat until whatever. And by that point, I'm fucking famished. I'm not making the best decisions.
No. And you're probably with the boys.
Yeah.
Right?
And we're like all out here. But for the most part, I think I eat clean, not clean enough. But like, I'm not let me ask, I'm not going to a fucking show where I have to starve myself for 10 weeks straight. That's just not who I am nor want to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, what's the point of it if I'm doing it for motivation for mind, body, and spirit? Really, what am I doing? You know what I'm saying? Because I want to enjoy it, but you know, there's a fine line, like everything, right? Yeah.
So moving forward, right? Because we could talk forever about this shit. What's the next 5 years look like, right? I'm going to give you, I know you've sat through a number of these conversations recently, right? Like, what's the next 5 years look like? I remember hearing that in an interview. I'm like, I'm trying to figure out right now. I got no clue.
I mean, so there's a dynamic answer to that, right? Like, I'm probably going to get married again. I'm definitely getting a puppy. So I'm getting John told me about that puppy. I'm getting a puppy.
This goes live on Wednesday. Does she know that you're getting married again?
I mean, we've talked about it.
All right. Yeah. Because I'm not editing that out.
No, you shouldn't.
I'll break the news.
Yeah. Listen, we're going to get married. How's that sound? We're going to get married. But like, you know, I think, my girls will go through, you know, they'll be in high school in 5 years.
Scary shit.
Yeah. I mean, like it's, well, maybe not high school. Wait, no, definitely not high school. No, they'll be in like middle school at that point.
What school district are you guys in?
We're in Colonial.
Doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, that I want to get a job that's like, you know, that I can grow into. I also want to, do some more traveling, and just be happy, man. Like, I think, time, with time, you have a lot of opportunity, to be happy. But I think, my own thoughts rob me of that a lot of the time. And so I'm not alone in that. But like, I want to just feel it. You can't be happy all the time. Listen, I just want to have faith that whatever's going to happen is for the greater good in progressing whatever it is that's coming down. Right.
Yeah.
But like, those are the things that I definitively know are happening. I'm going to get a car too. I don't know what kind of car, but I'm going to get, a 43-year-old responsible, but also nice car.
What's wrong with your car?
I don't fucking like it.
You don't like the Jeep?
Nah.
You know what you should get?
What?
An Audi SQ5.
I want the SQ8.
There it is.
But I'm looking at a few things right now, and I'm like obsessive.
Minivan.
No, fucking minivan. Fucking minivan. Oh man. What about you? What's in the next 5 years for you?
I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea. That's why I love being on this side, because I get to ask it. Nobody's ever actually asked it.
Listen, I'll throw the fire right back on you.
First and foremost, and this is going to sound really corny, right? But continue to watch my baby girls grow, right? Yeah. They're in a really cool age now. They're both 7, they're twins. I would hope they're both 7. Although they act like they're 13, which is really crazy right now.
Do they wear makeup by any chance?
They try all the time. So they don't leave the house with it. But when they're home, they have it on.
Dude, when did it become like little kids putting on fucking makeup? Like my kids just showed me makeup today. Mm-hmm. That's why I asked. I was just like, don't rob them of being little kids,
dude. It's like YouTube, dude. Which is like it's horrible, but so the makeup stuff, but so continue to watch them grow, right? Because like again, like I kind of grew up with like my mom was there and she was great. Mm-hmm. Shout out mom, but like my dad was never there. My wife tells me all the time, right? Like like daughters want their dad.
There's a special bond there.
Yeah. As much as they drive me insane, because like there's stuff that they do. I'm like, dude, go to your mom. Stop.
The hardest, best job there is. Mm-hmm. That's my tagline.
Yeah. And it's funny how it all works out, right? So I'm not from here. I'm from like Roxborough, Manayunk, really Germantown, but like I hung out in Roxborough, Manayunk, but I went to Roman Catholic.
Okay.
And like there's a kid or two in their class that like I graduated with their dad, right? And they say like, like little Mikey. And I'm like, dude, this is insane. Like I'm getting old.
Yeah.
As far as career wise, I have no idea. I know that I want to, in 5 years, I there's recovery is the best thing in my life, right? Mm-hmm. Like I hope that I'm still in recovery. Mm-hmm. Confident that I will be, right? Yeah. But I can't be that asshole that's going to be like, I know I'll be in recovery, because I've learned enough that I can't say something like that. Sure. But if it were up to me, I'd still be in recovery. And just kind of seeing like where I can be useful, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's literally my purpose, and I know that. I forget about myself a little bit less and less the more that I am concerned with somebody else.
Sure.
Not in like an obsessive way, but like how can I be useful in any regard. Mm-hmm. So it's a great segue too. Like so like you didn't go through everything you went through when you were 21, almost dying, then bringing you back, you not becoming a vegetable. Mm-hmm. Not only not being a vegetable, but also kind of like being a very fit individual now, a father, right, of two daughters. Mm-hmm. You didn't go through all of that pain, and there's pain coming with the daughters too.
Oh, I believe it.
So like, what's the purpose behind all of it?
That's the $1 million question, right? What is the purpose behind all of it? I mean, so I look at it like, why me? Why not somebody else? Right? I can't answer that. All I know is like, I got fitted for a path that was pre-existent before I even knew it. Right. And so I've just been following that path. I mean, like, listen, there's no sunshine without rain. You know what I'm saying? And we all got to play in the mud. Mm-hmm. And so like, I feel, what has transpired that has been painful made me that much of a stronger person on the out. And then also, what has been good for me has been at the point of desperation where thinking that wasn't going to happen, and that out of the blue, like if you would have asked me like 2 months ago, while at the peak of terribleness at my job, getting a house and like worrying about life, the feelings that I feel today were the complete opposite of that. And so thinking that it was never going to end. But once you get on the other side of it, you know, for me, I started to develop faith that, you know, shit's just going to work out. I don't know how. Shit's just going to work out. And this is the path that's in front of me. I'm going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it was.
I mean, I believe that to my core, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't always agree with how it works out when it's going down.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm a very firm believer that I didn't get brought this far by something greater than myself to get just dropped here.
Yeah.
You know, call it karma, call it God, call it whatever you want, right? But like I try to like at least put something good out. If something good comes back, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
But there's so much shit going on in this world that it's like, why would I contribute to like somebody else's misery?
Yeah. I mean, so that stems from me recovering from that stroke, like almost 100%, if not more.
Yeah.
At this point, because I feel like, you know, I'm back, you know.
You're probably better than, yeah.
Yeah. And so I never wanted to squander that gift.
Mm-hmm.
And so it comes from that, I guess. It's like, you know, I feel I've got the opportunity and I don't ever want to, you know, you hear people like complain about a lot of shit, and I'm guilty of it too, but complain about a lot of shit that can change. I'm usually of the mindset that like, I don't do that. And if I do that, I'm on the path to change it. Like, it's not that I'm sitting in it. It's, you know, so like, I never want to feel like, you know, the gift that I got was squandered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've noticed that with myself as well, right? Like when I start to like be very vocal about like my thoughts and opinions on things and like, you know, I'm just not happy with a certain situation. Once I start talking about it, whether it's in a good light, bad light, nasty light, not very like good of me to even say in public, like change is happening one way or another. Either the change is happening from somewhere else and like, you know, there's going to be some repercussions, or like I'm going to like actually take action and, you know, and find that change. Anything else you want to say before we shut it down?
No,
other than one of the best Instagram names I've ever seen.
Luck of the Jew. Check me out.
I was like creeping a little bit. It's all Seinfeld's. I mean, well, obviously, like your feed, right, is like obviously your family.
Yeah, feed's family. Reels. My reels are all Seinfeld and Curb. And so like, so Luck of the Jew came about. Dude, it's silly, but we used to go. Me and my buddy, one of my best friends, we used to drive down the city when I lived in the suburbs. Every time we would drive around. And even when I lived in the city, when parking, I would always find the spot. I'd be like, yo, there's a spot right there.
And we got the Lucky Jew with us.
And I was like, it's the Luck of the Jew. And so I was like, yo, that's the perfect fitting Instagram handle ever. Yeah.
Until you have to like, you know, when you first met your now girlfriend, right? When she found out what your Instagram handle was, she was like, where... Did she ask like, what's this about?
Nah. I mean, everybody fucking laughs. They're just like, no, seriously, is it Luck of the Jew? Yeah. Luck _Jew or luck _of _Jew.
Love it.
I'm like, all right, cool.
I think I was joking with John after I met you, because I couldn't like put luck together, but I knew it was something Jew. And I was like, who? I was like, what's his name again? I was like, Sober Jew?
Yeah.
But yeah, so listen, I always botch this part, right? But Apple and Spotify, Pain with a Purpose podcast. Go like us, leave a comment, positive review, whatever, if you like what we're saying. If not, that's cool too. We're going to keep doing it. YouTube, Pain with a Purpose podcast, and then on Instagram, Pain W Purpose. Support definitely keeps us growing, definitely keeps us going. And, you know, but if not, that's cool too. But yeah, I really do appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Super happy that like we met, right?
Same.
And like everything kind of aligned. Again, you know, shout out Philly Gaines and John Bennett, because like, you know, he just continues to like, I don't think he really realizes how much crossover there is with like, maybe not people in recovery, right? But like people trying to like better themselves and like walking into his store and such a part that he plays in it. Well, at some point I'll get him to realize it, but like, you know,
he's like a matchmaker.
He is.
Yeah.
Big stuff coming up with him in the coming weeks.
I know, his head's so big.
Yeah. Well, that too. Yeah.
His head is, follow him, Fat Juan. No, I was just joking.
I forgot you saying it. Yeah. Was that where you were at? Yeah, that's your nickname for him, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know what it is. He changed it the one time. John.
Fat Face Juan for the Spanish folks watching this this podcast.
But yeah, he's great, man.
Yeah.
I remember walking into a store and I had no clue.
John's one of the nicest guys. So got to become friends with John more than just like a patron. Like we've had in-depth conversations. John's a really good dude, and like it's hard to find that genuineness in folks. Like he, you know, you can tell when he talks to you, like what he's saying is what it is. And so yeah.
He was probably, it's safe to say that he's probably one of the first people outside of like a recovery thing that I found that like I just felt comfortable speaking with.
Yes.
That like could actually like engage in like a kind of like a conversation that we're used to having, but like outside of the rooms, people are like, or like shut you down, or like you wouldn't feel comfortable bringing up like stuff that,
whoa, buddy, why don't you take that to your therapist? Okay.
Yeah. And you're like, well, I thought I was your therapist. So,
no,
but yeah, great. In any sense, man, I appreciate it again.
Yeah, for sure.
And we will see you guys next week.